He slid a blue envelope across the table, and in that instant, I knew my marriage was over. The candlelight blurred his smile. Too calm, too practiced. I thought it was a surprise trip, but inside were divorce papers. And what I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. His betrayal went far deeper than I could ever imagine. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely? This story will remind you that patience, strategy, and quiet strength can turn even the cruelest betrayal into victory. Now, let's begin. The candlelight at Marcello's flickered across the white tablecloth like dying stars, and I watched my husband David slide a blue envelope toward me with hands that didn't shake. His smile was too perfect, too rehearsed, the smile of a man who'd practiced this moment in the mirror. My heart hammered against my ribs, but not with the excitement I'd felt getting dressed tonight. It was dread, pure and primal, though I couldn't yet name why. "Happy anniversary, Elena," he said, and something in his voice made the restaurant noise fade to a distant hum. I should have known then. I should have felt it in the air, in the weight of that envelope, in the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. But I didn't. Not yet. I was still the woman who believed in surprises, who'd worn the burgundy dress he once said he loved, who had spent an hour on her hair because tonight was supposed to matter. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. I was expecting vacation brochures, Santorini, maybe, where I'd always dreamed of watching the sunset from those whitewashed cliffs, or jewelry, or a romantic letter apologizing for the 6 months of distance I'd been trying not to notice. What I found instead were words that shattered everything. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The paper felt like ice in my hands. Legal letterhead. Official stamps. And there, at the bottom, David's signature, dated 3 days ago. 3 days he'd walked around our home, kissed me goodbye in the mornings, slept beside me at night, all while this document sat somewhere, waiting for this exact moment. David? My voice came out strangled, barely recognizable. What is this? He leaned back in his chair with the ease of someone delivering a well-prepared presentation. Elena, we've grown apart. You know, we have. I need to be honest with myself and with you. You deserve someone who can give you what you need. The restaurant continued around us. Laughter from nearby tables. The clink of glasses. A waiter approached, saw my face, and pivoted away. Other diners were beginning to notice the woman frozen with papers in her hands. The man, speaking with calm finality. I've already moved my things out, David continued, as if discussing a business transaction. I didn't want to drag it out and make things harder. I've paid a year's rent in advance on the apartment, so you'll have time to figure things out. My lips moved, but no sound came. He'd thought of everything. The logistics, the timeline, the money to ease his conscience. Everything except how this might destroy me. Why today? I finally whispered. Why our anniversary? His smile didn't waver. It felt symbolic, you know? Ending where we began. Clean closure. Symbolic. He'd turned the day we'd celebrated our beginning into the day he'd execute our ending. And he'd done it here, at Marcello's, where we'd had our first date 10 years ago. Where I'd fallen in love with a man who apparently no longer existed if he ever had. I sat there, divorce papers clutched in my hands, while my husband signaled for a check he'd already paid online. He stood, adjusting his jacket with the same casual gesture he used after business meetings. Take care of yourself, Elena, he said, and walked out. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too shocked, too shattered, too completely blindsided. I sat at that table for 20 minutes, staring at those papers, while the restaurant moved around me like I was invisible. Then my phone buzzed. A text from David. The apartment key is on the kitchen counter. I won't be coming back. That's when I understood. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't a painful but necessary conversation. This was calculated, planned. He'd been orchestrating this for months, maybe longer. Every late night at work. Every I'm too tired to talk. Every time he'd said, not now, when I tried to discuss our distance. He'd been building toward this moment, and I'd been too blind to see it. But what I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't discover until I started looking was that David's betrayal went so much deeper than divorce papers at an anniversary dinner. He'd been living an entire second life, and the surprise he'd given me that night was nothing compared to the ones I was about to uncover. But I hadn't always been blind. 3 months earlier, I'd found the first crack in the facade of our perfect marriage. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unremarkable in every way. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom windows while I sorted David's clothes for the dry cleaner. His gray suit jacket, the one he'd worn to what he called the Seattle conference, lay across our bed. I checked the pockets out of habit. David was always leaving receipts, business cards, random scraps of paper with notes he'd never explain. My fingers closed around something in the inner pocket. A receipt, folded twice. Hotel Meridian. 2 nights. 8 for 7. Stared at it, my brain stuttering over the details. The Hotel Meridian was downtown, 20 minutes from our house, and the dates they matched exactly when David had supposedly been in Seattle for 3 days. My hands went cold. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he'd had a client meeting there and the hotel messed up the billing. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why my husband had spent 2 nights at a local hotel while telling me he was 1,200 miles away, but even as I tried to rationalize it, something in my gut twisted. The receipt felt heavy in my hand, weighted with truth I didn't want to see. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get it in focus. Then I folded the receipt exactly as I'd found it and slipped it back into the pocket, arranging the jacket just so on the bed. My heart hammered as I continued sorting clothes. But I wasn't really seeing them anymore. I was seeing David's face 2 weeks ago when he'd come home from Seattle, kissing my cheek and complaining about flight delays. I was seeing his suitcase by the door, looking barely used. I was seeing all the small things I'd noticed, but explained away. The distant look in his eyes, the way he'd started keeping his phone face down, the sudden interest in working late. I told myself it was stress, work pressure, a phase. What if it wasn't? That evening, David announced he needed a shower before dinner. Long day, he said, already heading toward the bathroom. Give me 10 minutes. I heard the water start, heard him humming something under his breath. His laptop sat open on the desk in our home office, screensaver dancing with abstract shapes. David never logged out at home, said it was a pain to keep entering passwords in his own house. I stood in the doorway, listening to the shower run, listening to my conscience scream at me not to do what I was about to do. Then I thought of that receipt. Hotel Meridian. 2 nights? I crossed to the desk and touched the mouse. The screen came alive, his email already open. I didn't have to search long. Hotel confirmations, one after another. The Meridian, the Westbrook, the Grand Plaza, all downtown hotels. All on nights he'd said he was working late, or at a conference, or meeting with clients. 3 confirmations in the past 2 months alone. My stomach turned to ice. I scrolled further, found emails to someone saved in his contacts as just V, no last name, no profile picture. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red dress I love. You looked incredible yesterday. I can't stop thinking about you. Soon, I promise. We just need to be patient a little longer. Patient. For what? I kept scrolling, my hands trembling so badly I could barely control the mouse. Then I found his calendar. Most entries were normal. Client meetings, conference calls, lunch appointments. But there, 3 months from now, was an entry that made everything stop. Anniversary dinner with he wrap things up. Wrap things up. Not celebrate. Not romantic evening. Wrap things up. Like I was a project he needed to complete. A task to check off his list. He was planning to end our marriage. At our anniversary, he'd already marked the date. The shower turned off. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and took photos of everything: the emails, the calendar, the hotel confirmations. Then I closed the browser and fled back to the bedroom, climbing under the covers and grabbing the book from my nightstand. David emerged minutes later, towel around his waist, hair damp. He smiled at me, that same distant smile I'd been seeing for months. Reading? He asked. I forced my voice. Steady. How was your day? Exhausting. He pulled on pajama pants, completely at ease, completely normal. I'm beat. He kissed my forehead routine, emotionless. The kind of kiss you'd give a sister, and climbed into bed beside me. Love you, he murmured, already turning away. You too, I whispered to his back. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. He always fell asleep fast, effortless, clear conscience. I lay there in the darkness, book forgotten in my hands, listening to him breathe. My husband, the man I'd built a life with, who was planning to wrap things up with me in 3 months while sleeping with someone named V in downtown hotels. My mind raced through possibilities. Should I confront him? Demand an explanation? Maybe there was some other reason. Maybe, but that calendar entry. Wrap things up. If I confronted him now, he'd get defensive. He'd delete the evidence. He'd spin some story, and I'd never know the full truth. He'd control the narrative, make me look paranoid or jealous. And if he was already planning to leave me, he'd just accelerate his timeline. I needed to be smarter than my hurt, smarter than my anger. I needed to protect myself. In the darkness, listening to David's peaceful sleeping, I made a decision. If he wanted to end our marriage, fine. But he wouldn't ambush me. He wouldn't leave me with nothing. He wouldn't get to write the ending alone. I didn't sleep that night. But by morning, I made a plan. If David wanted to end our marriage, he could. But he wouldn't leave me with nothing. Not if I had anything to say about it. Tomorrow, I'd find a lawyer, and I'd start building my own surprise. James Thornton's office was on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise. All glass and steel, and the kind of quiet that money buys. I told David I had a dentist appointment, something routine. Nothing to worry about. He'd barely looked up from his phone when I left. James was younger than I expected, mid-40s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I'd found him through careful research, reading reviews that called him thorough and strategic. I needed both. I spread the printed photos across his mahogany desk, hotel receipts, email screenshots, the calendar entry that still made my stomach clench, anniversary dinner with he wrap things up. James studied everything in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. What do you want from this, Elena? The question caught me off guard. I'd expected him to ask about David, about the affair, about what I knew. Instead, he was asking about me. I want to protect myself, I said. Then, surprising myself, and I want him to know I'm not the person he thinks I am. James nodded slowly. Tell me about your assets. Assets? I blinked. You mean like the house? Let's start there. I explained how my grandmother had left me money when I was 26, a substantial inheritance specifically earmarked for purchasing a home. She didn't want me to ever be dependent on anyone, I said, the memory suddenly sharp. I bought the house 2 years before David and I got married. He moved in after the wedding, and the deed? It's in my name. We always talked about adding him, but we never got around to it. I paused. He calls it our house though. I think he assumes. Does he know it's only in your name? I don't think so. We just never discussed it explicitly. James pulled a file from his desk drawer, flipped through pages. You refinanced 3 years ago, correct? Yes, to get a better rate. He slid a document toward me. This is a post-nuptial agreement you both signed as part of that refinance. See here? David acknowledged the house as your separate property. His signature is witnessed by his own attorney. I stared at the document. I'd completely forgotten about it, just thought it was routine bank paperwork David's lawyer had told us we needed to sign. This is actually very good for you, James said quietly. What else? He continued. Car? Paid off with inheritance money. Titles in my name only. Retirement accounts? Savings? I hesitated. We have a joint account for household expenses. But I also have my business. Your business? Freelance consulting. I run it from home. I felt almost embarrassed saying it. David always called it my little side project. Made it sound like a hobby I eventually outgrow. How much do you make from this business? About $85,000 a year. James's eyebrows rose. And David doesn't know? He never asked. He just assumed it was barely anything enough for me to feel productive. Not enough to matter. The words tasted bitter. I have a separate account for it that he doesn't have access to. James leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, I saw a hint of a smile. Elena, you're in a much stronger position than you realize. Over the next hour, James laid out a strategy. Don't confront him. Not yet. His voice was firm. Keep gathering evidence. Act completely normal. Don't change any behavior. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage. He outlined what I needed to do. Document everything. Check for more hidden spending. Identify who V was. Prepare for every scenario. That calendar entry, I said, my voice tight. Do you think he's planning to divorce me at our anniversary dinner? In front of people? James's expression darkened. It's possible. Some people like theatrical moments. They think it gives them control of the narrative. Anger flared hot in my chest. So he gets to humiliate me in front of everyone? Get sympathy as the honest husband who came clean? Or, James said carefully, you could be prepared. If you know it's coming, you control how you respond. The words hung in the air between us. What if I had my own surprise? What if I was ready? The thought took root. Dangerous and thrilling. 3 days later, I met Sophie at our usual coffee shop. She texted asking to talk, and I knew from her tone what was coming. She looked nervous, stirring her latte without drinking it. There's something I need to tell you. If it's about David and Vanessa Reed, I interrupted gently. I already know. Sophie's face crumpled. You know? How long? About a month. Why didn't you tell me? The tears came fast. I saw them together at a work event. Vanessa works at my firm, she's in marketing. They were holding hands, Elena. She was showing people this expensive necklace, talking about someone special who gave it to her. Sophie's voice broke. I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was innocent. I didn't know how to tell you. I was a coward. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're telling me now. I should have been braver. You're being brave now. That's what matters. I squeezed her fingers. And I need your help. Sophie looked up, mascara smudging her cheeks. Anything. I need you to gather information. Where they go. What Vanessa says at work. Any mention of future plans? I kept my voice steady, though my heart was racing. Can you do that? Sophie wiped her eyes and nodded fiercely. Yes. Absolutely yes. We sat there for another hour while Sophie told me everything she knew. Vanessa was 32, ambitious, newly divorced. She'd been bragging to colleagues about a serious relationship with someone who was finally leaving his wife. She'd shown photos of expensive dinners, weekend getaways. There's something else, Sophie said quietly. Last week, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking about baby names. The coffee shop tilted. Baby? I don't know if she's pregnant or if they're just planning, but Sophie's eyes were full of pain. I'm so sorry, Elena. I sat very still, processing. A baby. David had told me he wasn't ready to try again after my miscarriage. Wasn't ready with me. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. Sophie hugged me tight in that coffee shop, tears streaming down her face. I should have been braver, she whispered. I squeezed back. You're being brave now. That's what matters. But inside, I was thinking, brave isn't enough. I need to be strategic. I need to be ruthless. I need to protect myself, because no one else will. David thought he knew me, the accommodating wife, the woman who made herself smaller to make him comfortable. He had no idea who I was becoming, and he wouldn't. Until it was too late. The house was quiet that afternoon, David at work like always. When I found the card, I'd been going through his desk methodically for weeks now, not snooping, documenting. Bank statements showing charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Credit card bills with jewelry purchases I'd never received. Everything organized in a folder James had told me to keep. Everything I'd need for the divorce. But I wasn't prepared for what I found beneath the stack of old business cards in the bottom drawer. A congratulations card. Cream-colored, expensive. The front showed a silver baby rattle tied with a blue ribbon. My hands trembled as I opened it. To the father of my child. Can't wait for our family to be together. All my love, V. The date, 3 weeks ago. The card slipped from my fingers. I fell into David's desk chair, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to do anything but stare at those words. A baby. Not just an affair. Not just another woman. A whole future. A family. The thing we'd talked about on our second date. The dream we'd whispered about in the dark. David was having it. Just not with me. The memory crashed over me. 2 years ago, 12 weeks pregnant, sitting in that sterile doctor's office while they told me there was no heartbeat. David had held my hand while I cried. Told me we'd try again when the time was right. And when I'd brought it up months later, still grieving, still hoping, he'd said, "I'm not ready yet. Let's wait." I'd believed him. I'd waited. The truth was so much crueler. He wasn't ready for a baby with me. He was saving that dream for Vanessa. I don't remember moving to the floor, but suddenly I was there, back against the wall, the card clutched in my hand. And for the first time since finding that hotel receipt, I let myself break. The sobs came from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd been holding, locked, and silent for weeks. I wasn't crying for David, not anymore. I was crying for myself. For the 10 years I'd given him. For the dreams he'd stolen while I slept beside him, trusting him, believing him. When did she get pregnant? How far along was she? Had he gone to ultrasound appointments, seen the grainy black and white images, heard the heartbeat I'd lost? Had he felt the baby kick through her belly? All the small miracles I'd wanted to share with him? He was living the life we'd planned. He just edited me out of it. The thoughts spiraled, each one sharper than the last. Everyone probably knew. Vanessa's friends, her family, people at Sophie's office. The only person who didn't know David was going to be a father was his actual wife. I looked at the clock through blurred vision, 2:37 p.m. David would be home by 6:30. I had 4 hours. I set an alarm on my phone for 3:30. Gave myself exactly 1 hour to fall apart. After that, I had to get up. Had to wash my face, hide the evidence of tears, put the card back exactly where I'd found it. 1 hour to be broken. Then I'd become something else. When the alarm buzzed, I stood on shaking legs, walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face until the redness faded from my eyes, took a photo of the card with steady hands, steadier than I expected, placed it back in the drawer, arranged the business cards on top just as they'd been. I gave myself 1 hour to be broken, I whispered to my reflection. Now, done being the victim. If you were in Elena's place, what would you do next? Confront him, or stay quiet and plan your move? Tell me in the comments how you think you would handle that kind of betrayal. And if you're still watching, it means you're as hooked as I was writing this, so make sure you've subscribed. Because the best part of her story is yet to come. I could have confronted him. Should have, maybe. I imagined it as I made dinner, throwing the card at him the moment he walked through the door, screaming about the baby, about the lies, about every betrayal, watching him scramble for excuses that wouldn't come. But James's voice echoed in my head. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage. And I realized I didn't want to vent. I wanted to win. So when David came home at 6:35, I was setting pasta on the table, a smile on my face. "Hey," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Something smells good. Long day?" I asked, pouring him wine. Exhausting. He sank into his chair with a sigh. "Thanks for cooking. We ate dinner like we had 1,000 times before." I asked about his day, some client issue, some deadline stress. He asked about mine. I invented a story about grocery shopping and a call with my mother. Normal, routine, comfortable. I laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when he made a point about work politics, refilled his wine glass, all while thinking, I know about your baby. I know about Vanessa. I know everything. The performance was easier than I expected. Maybe because I'd been performing for months without realizing it, playing the role of the wife who didn't notice her husband slipping away. "You seem happy tonight," David said, smiling at me across the table. "I am," said truthfully, because I was happy knowing that in 1 month, he'd understand exactly how wrong he'd been about me. That night, I waited until David's breathing deepened into sleep. Then I pulled out my phone. The screen's glow harsh in the darkness. Instagram. Search, Vanessa Reed. Her profile was public, of course it was. Why hide when you're building a life with someone else's husband? I scrolled through months of photos. There she was at restaurants I recognized, tagged in locations David had told me were work meetings. There she was in a candid shot, laughing, her hand on a visible baby bump. Comments from friends, glowing mama, so happy for you. Can't wait to meet the little one. One photo from 2 weeks ago stopped me cold. Vanessa in profile, her pregnant belly prominent, hand resting on it protectively. The caption, "Can't wait to meet you, little one. Your daddy and I are so excited." Your daddy and I posted publicly. Her friends knew. Her family knew. Sophie's entire office knew. The only person who didn't know David was about to become a father was the woman he'd promised to build a family with 10 years ago. He'd been living 2 complete lives, 2 futures, and he'd been planning to erase me from both of them. At our anniversary dinner, probably with Vanessa waiting in the wings to comfort him through his difficult divorce, I downloaded every photo, screenshotted every caption, sent everything to the secure cloud storage James had told me to set up. Beside me, David slept peacefully, one arm thrown over his pillow, completely unaware that his carefully constructed plan was about to collapse. Let him have his anniversary surprise, I whispered in the darkness. Let him think he's in control, but I'll have one too, and mine will change everything. I fell asleep that night not as David's heartbroken wife, but as his opponent, and I was going to win. 2 weeks before the anniversary, I was in my home office preparing financial documents for James when I noticed something strange in my business email archives. I'd been looking for old contract records, building a complete picture of my consulting income. That's when I saw it. 2 years ago, a major consulting firm had reached out about a contract that would have doubled my income, but I'd never responded, except I'd never seen it. I stared at the screen, confused. The email should have been in my inbox or deleted folder. Instead, it was in a subfolder I hadn't created, labeled Archive Declined. My hands went cold as I searched for David's name in my email system. Filter rules, dozens of them, all created from my account, all forwarding emails with certain keywords: opportunity, contract, speaking engagement, promotion, to David's email address, then automatically deleting them from my inbox. I scrolled through the redirected messages, each one a knife to the gut. A promotion opportunity from my former employer, speaking invitations from industry conferences, client inquiries I'd never received, all sent to David, all disappeared from my view. Then I found his responses, sent from my email address. Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm scaling back to focus on family. I've decided to take a different direction with my career. I'm not interested in expanding at this time. He'd been responding as me, declining opportunities on my behalf, making people think I wasn't interested in growing my business. All while I wondered why my career felt stagnant, why clients weren't calling, why I felt like I was failing at something I loved. He made me doubt myself, made me think I wasn't good enough, wasn't getting opportunities because I wasn't talented enough. And he'd done it deliberately, methodically, over years, all while planning to leave me. My hands shook as I took screenshots of everything, every filter rule, every redirected email, every response he'd sent pretending to be me. I sent it all to James with the subject line, "Economic abuse?" His response came within an hour. "This changes everything. This is actionable. He didn't just cheat, he actively tried to make you financially dependent. Malicious intent. We can pursue damages." I sat back in my chair, rage burning through my veins. David hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been systematically dismantling my independence, my confidence, my future. He'd wanted me weak, dependent, easy to control. When he finally decided to discard me, he'd underestimated me completely. That evening, James sent over copies of our refinance documents from 3 years ago. "Read them carefully this time," his note said. I did. Every page, every clause, every footnote, I'd skimmed past when we'd signed them. And there it was, buried in the paperwork, a postnuptial agreement explicitly acknowledging the house as my separate property. David's signature was witnessed by his own attorney. Right there in black and white, he'd signed without reading carefully, trusting it was just routine bank documents. The same way I'd trusted him for 10 years. The irony was almost funny. David had secured my ownership of the house while planning to leave me. He'd handed me the weapon I needed, signed and notarized. Because he hadn't paid attention, the same way I hadn't paid attention to his affair, James's note at the bottom of the page. This makes the house uncontestable. Combined with the career sabotage evidence, you have a strong case for damages. He wanted you weak and dependent. This document proves malicious intent. The final 2 weeks blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Week 1, I met with an accountant who helped me separate my business accounts completely, moving my income to a new bank David didn't know existed. The joint account we shared for household expenses was left with just enough to avoid suspicion. James prepared the divorce petition, including every piece of evidence we'd gathered: the affair, the career sabotage, the baby, the financial manipulation, everything ready to file. The day after our anniversary, I even visited the police station to file a report about the email tampering. The detective took notes, said it could be civil or criminal computer fraud, identity theft, unauthorized access. We'll investigate, he promised. Week 2 was personal preparation. I bought a new dress, emerald green, favorite color, not burgundy like David preferred. Got my hair done. Stood in front of the mirror, practicing calm expressions until they felt natural. Rehearsed scenarios: if he cries, if he gets angry, if he tries to make me the villain. I flew home to visit my mother for a weekend, explained everything. She cried, then got angry, then hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I never liked how he dismissed your business, she said. Like you were playing at being an adult instead of actually running a company. I know, Mom, you're stronger than he ever gave you credit for. I'm starting to realize that. Sophie sent regular updates. Vanessa was 6 months pregnant. She and David were looking at houses together. Office gossip said they were engaged. He bought her a ring 3 months ago, right around the time he'd started planning our anniversary surprise. The night before the anniversary, I barely slept. Lay in bed going over everything in my mind. Every document, every piece of evidence, every possible scenario. James's final text came at p.m. Remember, you're in control. You know what's coming. He doesn't. I texted back, I'm ready, and I was. The fear had burned away, leaving something harder in its place. Anniversary morning, David was nervous. I watched him from the bedroom doorway as he adjusted his tie for the 3rd time, checking his reflection, practicing his expression. He was preparing for his big moment, the theatrical ending he'd been planning for months. Big night tonight, he said, catching my eye in the mirror. Yes, I agreed, smiling. Yes, it is. He smiled back, relieved. I seemed happy. He thought I was excited about whatever romantic surprise he'd hinted at all week. He had no idea. As I watched David rehearse his speech in the mirror that morning, I felt something unexpected: pity. He thought he was about to have his perfectly planned moment. He thought he had all the power. He thought I was still the woman he married, naive, trusting, easy to control. He was wrong about all of it, and tonight, at Marcello's, over candlelight and wine, and the ghost of our first date, he was going to find out just how wrong. I woke up the morning after the anniversary in my own bed, in my own house, truly mine. As David was about to discover, to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close, the house was quiet. David's absence should have hurt more, should have felt like a wound, fresh and raw. Instead, I felt oddly clear-headed, like I'd been walking through fog for months, and it had finally lifted. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, but somehow menacing. I picked it up. 17 missed calls from David, 3 from Margaret, his mother, dozens of texts. I didn't bother reading beyond the preview lines. We need to talk. This is insane. Call me back. I scrolled past all of them to the one message that mattered. James, how are you holding up? I typed back, better than expected. Ready to file? His response came immediately, already done. He'll be served today at 9 a.m. I set the phone down and felt something I didn't expect. Satisfaction. Not guilt. Not sadness. Just clean, simple satisfaction. David thought he'd controlled the narrative. He was about to learn otherwise. James called me at a.m. with an update, delivered in his usual calm tone. But I could hear the hint of amusement underneath. The process server found him at Vanessa's apartment. He was confident at first, apparently thought you were being served. Not him. I could picture it. David in his pajamas, probably drinking coffee, secure in his new life. Opening the door, expecting nothing important. What happened? He started reading. His lawyer called me an hour ago. James forwarded me the voicemails David had left throughout the morning. I listened to them in order, watching his confidence crumble with each message. 9:30 a.m. Elena, what is this? This is insane. Call me. His voice tight with disbelief. 10:15 a.m. You can't do this. The house is ours. This is vindictive, and you know it. Anger creeping in now. 11:00 a.m. I have a lawyer. They say you have no case. You're going to lose everything. Call me back. False bravado. 2:00 p.m. Please. We need to talk. I know you're upset, but this is crazy. We can work this out. The first hint of desperation. 5:00 p.m. Fine. Be that way. You'll regret this. Back to anger. But it sounded hollow now. Scared, I saved every message and forwarded them to James with a simple text. He's panicking. James. Good. Let him panic. Don't respond. I blocked David's number and felt lighter than I had in months. 1 week later, I sat in James's conference room across from David and his lawyer, Patricia Hammond. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. David looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Patricia, on the other hand, radiated professional confidence. She clearly thought this would be a simple negotiation. My client is willing to be reasonable, Patricia began, her voice smooth. Mr. Martinez will offer Miss Martinez 60% of the house value in the settlement. In exchange, she drops the economic abuse claims and agrees to a quiet, amicable divorce. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was smiling. She had no idea. James didn't even look up from his papers. The house is Miss Martinez's separate property. Mr. Martinez has no claim to it whatsoever. He slid documents across the polished table, the purchase receipt showing I'd bought the house with inheritance money before our marriage, and the postnuptial agreement from our refinance. David's signature clear and witnessed. Patricia's confidence flickered. David went pale. That was just a formality, David stammered. The bank required, it's a legal document you signed, James interrupted calmly. With your own attorney present, I might add. It explicitly acknowledges the house as Miss Martinez's separate property. Patricia flipped through the documents, her professional mask slipping. I watched her realize her client had walked into this meeting completely unprepared. There's more, James continued, pulling out another folder. We have evidence that Mr. Martinez systematically sabotaged Miss Martinez's career over a period of years. He laid out the emails David had sent from my account, declining opportunities I'd never seen. The filter rules he'd created to intercept my business correspondence. The clients and contracts I'd lost because David had told them I wasn't interested. Patricia's face darkened. She was going to work too much. David exploded, finally finding his voice. I was protecting our marriage by destroying her professional opportunities. James asked, his tone still maddeningly calm. While planning to leave her? That's textbook economic abuse, Mr. Martinez. James pulled out one final folder, the affair evidence. Photos of David and Vanessa at restaurants, hotels. Her Instagram posts with the baby bump. Captions about daddy. The timeline showing the affair had been ongoing for at least 8 months before David filed for divorce. Patricia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she was in damage control mode. Can we have a moment alone with Mr. Martinez? James and I stepped outside. In the hallway, he turned to me. They're going to settle. They have no choice. Good. 5 minutes later, we returned. Patricia's face was professionally neutral, but David looked like he'd been crying. "We'd like to settle," Patricia said. "Mr. Martinez will release all claims to the house and accept the divorce terms as filed. He requests the economic abuse claims be dropped to avoid criminal investigation." James looked at me. I looked at Patricia, and I prompted. Patricia's jaw tightened. "He'll acknowledge wrongdoing in the marriage. Formally. In writing." These were the first words I'd spoken in the entire meeting, and they cut through the room like glass. I want it in writing. I want him to admit what he did. All of it. The affair, the sabotage, everything. David's head hung. Patricia nodded once. "We can do that." I stood, smoothing my dress. As I walked out of that conference room, I heard David call my name quiet, broken. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. He'd already said everything that mattered in those documents he'd signed, giving up any claim to my life, admitting what he'd done. He was finally telling the truth. Just 3 months too late. 1 year after David handed me divorce papers at Marcello's, I made a reservation at the same restaurant. Sophie tried to talk me out of it. "Are you sure? Won't it be painful?" "Maybe," I admitted. "But I want to reclaim that space. I don't want my last memory of Marcello's to be him ruining our anniversary. I want it to be me, choosing to be there for myself." So on a Friday evening, exactly 1 year later, I walked into Marcello's alone. By choice. I wore emerald green, my favorite color, not his. Requested a different table, the one by the window overlooking the city lights, instead of the corner booth where he'd ambushed me. The maitre d' recognized me, and his eyes held gentle understanding. "It's good to see you again, Miss Martinez," he said softly. "It's good to be here," I replied, and meant it. I ordered everything I wanted without compromise. Wine David would have called too bold. Pasta he would have said was too heavy. An appetizer just for me that he would have claimed we should skip. And when dessert came, I didn't share it with anyone. Between courses, I reflected on the year that had passed. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. David signed everything, acknowledged the affair, the career sabotage, all of it in writing. He walked away with essentially nothing: his personal belongings, his car, and half of our meager joint checking account. About $8,000 for 10 years of marriage. I kept the house, my business, and my dignity. My consulting business was thriving now. Without David's interference, opportunities had flooded and the word had gotten out that I was available for major projects. Last year, I made $140,000. This year, I was on track for $200,000. I'd hired 2 junior consultants to help with overflow work. I'd spoken at 3 industry conferences. I was finally achieving the success I'd always been capable of, but had been systematically prevented from reaching. I wasn't angry anymore. Wasn't sad. I was just free. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I was genuinely happy. The waiter brought my tiramisu with a flourish, along with something unexpected, a folded note on Marcello's cream stationery. "From a gentleman at the bar," he explained. "He's already left." My first thought was unwanted attention. Or worse, pity. Some regular who remembered the sad woman from last year's anniversary disaster. I opened it reluctantly. The handwriting was careful, slightly shaky. "I was here last year. I saw what happened with your husband. I watched you discover those papers, and I watched you hold yourself together with a grace I'll never forget. You don't know me, but I thought you should know. Your dignity that night inspired me to finally leave my own bad marriage. 3 months divorced now, and finally breathing again. No expectations here, no hidden agenda. Just one stranger wanting another stranger to know they made a difference. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. A fellow survivor." Read it 3 times. Tears blurring my vision. My worst moment sitting at that table. Divorce papers and shaking hands. Other diners staring had mattered to someone. My pain had become someone else's catalyst for change. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into my wallet. "The person who sent this," I asked the waiter when he returned. "Can you describe them?" He smiled. "Older gentleman, maybe 60. He was here with a woman who looked just like him, his daughter, I think. They were celebrating something. Looked happy. New beginnings, I thought. Just like me." After dinner, I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I walked the city streets, needing to process, to feel the cool night air on my face. My phone buzzed. "Sophie, how did it go?" I typed back. "Perfect. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Proud of you." I opened my notes app and started a list. Something I'd been thinking about all week. Things I want. Travel to Santorini, solo trip booked for spring, take painting class starts next month, expand consulting business, already happening, learn piano, bought keyboard last week. Be happy without needing permission, already am I. Was halfway through typing when I passed an art gallery, lights still glowing warm against the darkness. The sign said they were open late on Fridays. On impulse, I walked in. The space was quiet, peaceful. Abstract paintings hung on white walls. Sculptures caught the light in interesting ways. I browsed slowly, imagining what might look good in my redecorated home. "Can I help you find something?" A gallery employee approached, young and enthusiastic. "I'm looking for something that represents new beginnings," I said. Her smile widened. "I have just the thing." She led me to a large canvas in the corner. Abstract work, blues and greens swirling together, chaos gradually resolving into peace. It was beautiful, wild, and calm at the same time. "It's called After the Storm," she said. I stared at it, feeling something shift in my chest. "It's perfect. I'll take it." That night, I hung the painting in my living room, exactly where David's favorite landscape used to be. I stepped back to admire it, turning slowly to take in the entire space. My house. Every trace of David erased, but not out of anger or spite. Erased to make room for me. I made tea and sat on the back porch, looking up at stars barely visible through the city lights. I thought about the stranger's note, about Sophie's unwavering loyalty, about James's expertise, about my own strength I'd never known I possessed. Margaret had said something months ago, during her apology visit, "You're stronger than he ever gave you credit for." But the truth was deeper. I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. I pulled out the note from Marcello's and read it one more time in the porch light. "What strength looks like," the stranger had written. I smiled in the darkness. A year ago, I'd thought David's surprise had destroyed me. But it hadn't. It had freed me not just from him, but from every lie believed about myself. That I wasn't enough. That I needed someone else to be complete. That love meant making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I'd learned the truth. I was always enough. I was always strong. I just needed someone to take everything away. To finally see what I'd had all along. I folded the note and put it back in my wallet. Tomorrow, I'd frame it and hang it next to my new painting. A reminder that our worst moments can become our greatest transformations. That endings are also beginnings. That anniversaries aren't just about celebrating the past. Sometimes they're about honoring the courage it took to walk toward the future. What did this story make you feel? Anger, sadness, or maybe empowerment? Tell me in the comments what part of Elena's journey hit you the hardest, and what lesson you're taking from it. And if you want more stories of women who turn heartbreak into power, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one might just become your new favorite. Happy anniversary to me. To the day stopped being David's wife and started being Elena. Just Elena. And that was more than enough. Thank you for listening, and for being part of Dark Desire Studio. Until next time.